New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring. What if you had a place to return to every day for peace, clarity, and connection? The New Thought Ministry of Prayer offers live morning and evening prayer, along with a growing library you can access anytime. This is a space for reflection, renewal, and real spiritual practice, rooted in the understanding that something greater is already alive within you. You are welcome here. Join us live or watch anytime. The New Thought Ministry of Prayer, part of the New Thought Media Network. Come, take a moment for what matters most.
Thanks for watching. Thanks for watching.
Hey everybody, Tracy Brown here, Dr. Tracy Brown, and we're here for the Inclusive Church. Ooh, there is so much to talk about. This month is so interesting because it's June, and in many places, June is Pride Month. So there's lots to talk about as it relates to our LGBTQ plus communities. It's also Father's Day coming up during this month. There is the summer solstice, longest day of the year, coming up. In June, it's Black Music Month in June. There are a lot of things happening. So it's hard to choose what to talk about. But today we're going to talk about and think about and imagine about spiritual gaslighting, or gaslighting in the spiritual community, especially when we are using spiritual principle as the foundation for that. Sometimes when we are find ourselves doing spiritual bypass, we sometimes are doing that based on gaslighting, but a lot of times spiritual bypass is what we do to ourselves, right? And so, or what we are doing for ourselves. But sometimes when we are bypassing what someone is experiencing, and by using spiritual principles or platitudes, it can actually be an example of gaslighting. So we're going to talk about that for just a little bit today. Tracy had her own experience of recently in the last week of someone gaslighting her and using spiritual principle as their rationale, but also because it's an issue that comes up relatively frequently. So, spiritual gaslighting versus being truly inclusive is our topic for today. And if you are hanging out with me today, I want to invite you to follow Anita's lead and just say, hey, maybe let us know where you are viewing from. And I can see y'all out there because on my end, I can see I can see there are people on YouTube and on Facebook and on LinkedIn, but I can't see who you are. So feel free to either let me know and let everybody else know who they're watching with, or if you have a comment or a question while we are going through the next 30 minutes or so, then feel free to share it in the comments. Ooh, okay, so it dawns on me, or I'm really clear that everybody doesn't necessarily understand what gaslighting is, or that we might not all have the same definition. And so, yeah, I probably should talk about that a little bit because it could be an example of a word you've heard, but you've not really read anything about it. So, in general, from a sociology, psychology, applied behavioral sciences perspective, gaslighting is a form of psychological manipulation when person A tries to get, or in fact does get, person B or a group of people to doubt themselves. Gaslighting will sound like a subtle jab or a subtle criticism that may be related to professional, may be related to personal, but it undermines confidence. It undermines trust in leadership if leaders are doing this. And it can really erode team cohesion, right? It will shut down different perspectives because you are basically people for either something that isn't true or something that they can't change or something that has nothing to do with what is actually happening. And it's especially critical in terms of the negative impact it can have on relationships. So, what does gaslighting sound like? You will hear people say things like, oh, you're overreacting, right? And oh, what are you talking about? That never happened. Or, I know that happened, but you're just too sensitive, right? You're just too sensitive, and you shouldn't be even thinking about this. Or you shouldn't be talking about this, or you shouldn't be worrying about this, even though it feels like it's important to you. Other things that people say that can be and often are gaslighting. Oh, well, your idea has no merit. Right? My idea is important, and I don't. Why'd you even say that? It has no merit. Or I know the best way to handle this. I know the way. This is the way that this needs to be done. Other examples. Let's see if I can think of 2 or 3 more that are pretty common. Oh, well, yeah, you may think that, but everybody agrees with me, or nobody agrees with you. Nobody else thinks that's an issue. Um, you're the only one who feels that way. And often, gaslighting, obviously, it's not usually because somebody said something one time, it's a pattern over time that wears away the other person's confidence or leaves people feeling disrespected. And it doesn't, one time isn't going to tell you the story of gaslighting, because truly, I could be in a meeting and I might have a really bad idea, or an idea that really won't work because it's not in alignment with what it is that we're trying to solve. So it doesn't mean, like, if someone says that phrase, well, that idea has no merit, that they're gaslighting you automatically. It's when over a period of time that or other statements are used to create a power differential, where I'm the one who knows best. I'm the one who knows everything. You know nothing. And your ideas just need to not even be paid attention to. And so sometimes gaslighting is very passive aggressive, that people may not even be going at you directly. And so it'll be like really an indirect thing. And passive aggressiveness, it's that indirect jab, but gaslighting is really more manipulative. And that's another reason why you need to see it over time in general, one-on-one, using covert criticism, sarcasm. Oh, I was just kidding, after saying something that totally takes away any respect or value. But the person often will make it seem like, oh, but I'm just being nice, or, I am a nice person. I didn't really mean any. Oh, were your feelings hurt? Oh, you're just too sensitive, right? And then that builds and that builds. Often gaslighting is used if we're talking about teams and leadership to gain control, but usually it's really more about, I'm trying to preserve, if I'm the one gaslighting someone, I'm really insecure and I'm trying to assert my power, my authority. I'm trying to give myself a step up over you. And so often, not always, but often, gaslighting, the person who's doing the gaslighting is actually pretty insecure, or they are making a direct power play to be dominant. All right, so enough about gaslighting. It's something that's pretty common. And in some organizations, it's not even based on just 2 or 3 people interpersonally. It has been built into the culture itself. And that's pretty scary. So let's talk about our spiritual communities. Unfortunately, we have gaslighting in our spiritual communities, the kind I've been talking about or using as a descriptor, because any place you have leaders, any organization or group where you have groups of people, then you are probably going to have some gaslighting occur over time, because it is a reflection of individual power positioning. And it does come up a lot when there are people who have insecurity or are vying for power. But let's talk about culturally as well. Gaslighting becomes a cultural issue and a leadership issue when it is impacting people participating fully, when it is sending when the result of gaslighting makes your church uncomfortable and probably unwelcoming for identity groups of people. And there are 2 or 3 examples that seem to pop up more often than I would like to admit or see. So, I'm hesitating because there are like 5 examples that are saying, share me, share me. No, me first. So I'm going to start with one that really is dangerous and all too common. And that's the example where, in New Thought, we do teach, right? Our thoughts are things, and our thoughts become things, or change your thinking, change your life. And at the surface level, when we begin to adopt that belief and start living our lives based on those principles, we do see changes in our individual lives. And so sometimes when things happen and it's covered in the news, or maybe there's just a big conversation in your own church, and there will be someone or some group of people who will say, well, that group wouldn't have to deal with that if they would just apply our philosophy, right? Oh, well, if, people in that community want to have a better life, then, what they are experiencing is just a reflection of their consciousness. And so, they could live in a better area, but their consciousness is holding them there. Or people whose gender identity is affecting the way they are perceived in the world, or the employment that they are being welcomed into. And someone might say, well, they wouldn't have any trouble if they just believed. They just believed everywhere they go, everyone will accept them. They need, let's work with them and give them a new affirmation. Or when an unarmed Black man is killed while in the custody of a police officer, and the response in public is, well, he had to have done something wrong. He should have just done everything the officer ordered him to do. But in our spiritual community, the comments that people have shared with me of people saying, well, Black people just bring it on themselves. Like, they just bring it on themselves. They have a bad attitude and they just need to learn to integrate into the mainstream. And I'm listening to myself and I recognize my speech has gotten slower. I'm forcing myself to breathe, because this is not only because it's happened to me personally, but it's so painful for me to recognize and to talk about these ways that we hurt each other, that we create harm on top of harm. So yes, we teach that your thoughts ultimately create your reality. ultimately. But if we are blaming the victims of systemic oppression or federal or state or local community policy or regulation, and not recognizing that all of us are impacted by the systems and by the culture that we live within. So some of you have heard me talk about this from the other angle, that racism does exist. And as a person with brown skin, I've experienced my share of, I won't, no, not my fair share, not the most, but my share, because nothing about it would be fair share, right? But I've experienced my own examples or experiences where the fact that the consciousness of racism exists in 2026, in the 20th and 21st century, that I have been affected by it. I have been the target of it. I have complete control over how I respond to it. But there are things that people do that reflect their consciousness that I am affected by. And I get to do my work so that I am not immobilized by it, so that I am not a true victim of it, where I begin to believe that that is true or fair or appropriate. And so, in that sense, my thoughts change my experience or create the reality that I know how to navigate different situations. And some of that is when things are happening in the news or when things occur that reflect the racism that is in our culture, it does make me sad, or it makes me really angry, or as a result of it, I feel frustrated or confused. So when I begin to share that, because that might be part of my process, if someone in my spiritual community says, well, no, Tracy, racism doesn't really exist. You know, you're believing in racism, and that's why you are sad that that happened to that person. No, that would be gaslighting in a form that, again, someone means well, and they are refusing to acknowledge the actual situation. So as long as systemic oppression exists, as long as legislators create laws that affect or disenfranchise groups of people, whether that is by age or gender or sexual orientation or race or disability or language spoken or national origin or right, the list goes on and on. So in a spiritual community or in a church where we are committed to inclusion, it doesn't mean we have no boundaries. It doesn't mean that. It doesn't mean that no one has to take any responsibility. Of course, it doesn't mean that. It means that we notice the patterns that dismiss the actual experience that people are having. Because if they feel their experience is dismissed or discounted, then our church will not be a place where they feel comfortable, where they feel respected, where they feel seen, where they feel engaged. Like, take a breath, because the fact is, in our churches, often the gaslighting that occurs is unintentional and not even recognized or labeled in that way. A lot of times gaslighting happens because people think they are giving you some good advice, which is one reason why we really have to be careful about giving advice. And gaslighting often happens because people know the overarching meaning of our spiritual principles or platitudes or spiritual qualities, but they don't understand it at a deep enough level or at a level that extends to the culture versus to their individual experience. And so we must do a better job. We must do a better job of educating people about gaslighting or spiritual bypass or spiritual malfeasance. And, it's not intentional, but people often don't mean to discount others over and over and over and over and over again. Instead, they think they are standing on quote unquote capital H higher ground. Oh, let me remind you of what we teach. Instead of behaving from the place of love and compassion and saying, tell me more about what you are experiencing. Tell me more about how that announcement in the news yesterday, how is that affecting you personally? People, how would you like to move through this? Or how do you think support from our spiritual community could be helpful now? Or what would you like our member care team to do to support you? Or can I connect you with a prayer chaplain or a licensed practitioner? Because I know they would love to support you in spiritual mind treatment or in prayer. These are very easy things to do and very important ways to have the conversation when people are reporting some kind of discord or dissonance with something that's going on in the world that is having an impact on them. Move away from, well, I know the answer. Move away from, I can help you fix your problem. And instead begin to move toward, you tell me what you need right now. I am here to listen to you and to learn from you because I have a very different response to that announcement that was in the news yesterday in the headlines. But I haven't lived your life. So you talk to me because I want to see how that shows up for you. Marjorie says, sometimes gaslighting occurs in relation to perspective taking and or understanding of the principles. And I agree with you. Sometimes that does happen. I know more than you do. Oh, well, I've been studying this for 25 years and, you've only been studying it for 5 years. So, you just don't get it yet because you have a different understanding or experience than me. I think you don't get it. And we have to be really careful. And I thanks for this example, because for me, teaching courses and doing webinars and being in an educational mode, especially not so much in giving a talk because the feedback's not one-on-one or direct, but in classes and in webinars and in conversations. It happens a lot. And I have to do the work too. Like, I know I've trained myself pretty well to say, from the context of Ernest Holmes, what we teach in Science of Mind is this. And if we're good, and then often I will say, so tell me how that resonates with you, or how that resonates with other things that you have studied, because the last thing I want to do is make that other way of thinking or that other philosophy or that other theology wrong, because it works. However, at the same time, there are some things that are factual, but when we're talking about how people take it on, that's where we have to allow for an individualized experience, right? So there are times, every time someone says, no, that's not the right answer, they're not gaslighting. But when there is a pattern of, no matter what you say, you're the problem and you don't know what you're talking about, and there's a pattern of that, that definitely it would be gaslighting in the context of our spiritual communities. What I want us to do over the next week is really think about, in the context of systemic oppression or systemic discrimination or systemic, policy-wide, or policy-wide, not necessarily even political, but in our healthcare system, in our educational system. Where are the places that when people talk about it at church or come to our spiritual communities looking for support, that then we are either doing the same thing, which makes people say, I get that all week at work. I don't need to get that disrespect in my spiritual community too, right? So they don't come back, or they go away and they tell other people that we're not an inclusive or welcoming community. And then too, where are the opportunities for you to educate within your church and have some different conversations? So, kind of in summary, what is gaslighting? And paying attention to the idea that it's really a form of psychological manipulation. It's creating one up, one down. Some of the phrases, you're overreacting. Oh no, that never happened. You don't need to know that. Oh, Tracy, you're just too sensitive. I didn't mean anything by that. Everyone agrees with me, not you. And one of the ones that I have heard a lot in the last 6 to 9 months is, well, I don't know. I'm sure what you said was really was good, but I don't get it. And so we're going to do this, or we're going to go in this direction, because I just don't understand. I don't understand what you're talking about. Okay. So we want to be careful, and we want to be attentive to, especially if there is a pattern where we find people from one racial group or one age group or one gender identity group is being dismissed or ignored or downgraded in language by on a regular basis. by leaders, especially in our community. And we want all of our leaders to be trained and prepared to interrupt and correct if they are in the presence of someone who is making these kinds of comments in the course of, monthly team meetings or classes they are teaching, because it's really harmful. So I could keep talking about this, but I think I've covered the main points and repeated them at least once for reinforcement. So I'm going to close out our time together today and just ask you to remember that and to be attentive to your own conversation with people who are different from you in a significant way, and listen for, are you dismissing them or are you affirming them in a way that is helpful? And then if you are a leader, how are you preparing others to do the same? Spiritual gaslighting versus being truly inclusive. That's our theme for today and our focus for today. But I hope you'll come back and join me next Tuesday at noon Mountain Time so we can talk about some other issues related to being inclusive in our spiritual communities. My name is Tracy Brown. I'll see you next week.
Thanks for watching The Inclusive Church with Tracy Brown. Join us again next week at 12 noon Mountain Time.
There is a presence ready to meet you here. Join the New Thought Ministry of Prayer live every day, 8:15 a.m. and 8:15 p.m. Mountain Time. Enter a field of intention where prayer is spoken and something deeper is revealed. Our professional prayer partners stand with you in truth, in love, in possibility. Bring your request live or share it anytime at ntmedia.org/prayer. Come as you are and step into what is already becoming. We look forward to praying with you.